Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. Hurricane Dorian is still going, and we're still tracking the storm, so we'll have the latest. Plus, we look at the recovery efforts in the now devastated Bahamas. And in an abrupt surprise to her fans, Nicki Minaj retired. So we'll be discussing that. But first, here are your headlines.
Robert Mugabe, the former president of Zimbabwe, has died in a hospital in Singapore at the age of 95. Mugabe served as president of Zimbabwe for 37 years until a military coup in 2017. His three-decade reign was marred with controversy. In the early years, he was seen as a beacon of hope against the colonization of Africa, broadening access to health and education for the country's black majority. But his later years were marked by corruption, violent repression, economic turmoil, and accusations of human rights violations, as well as genocide. Robert Mugabe leaves behind a complicated and controversial legacy in Africa.
An American Airlines mechanic is due in federal court today to face charges that he sabotaged a passenger jet with 150 people on board. Court documents say the mechanic disabled the plane's navigation system because he was upset about stalled contract negotiations between his union and the airline. He said he was hoping to cause a delay and pick up some overtime. Aviation experts are stunned.
This is, quite frankly, extremely shocking to me because it's a tremendous breach of faith, and it's a breach of faith to all the other mechanics, tens of thousands of them who would never, ever do something like this. And this is the equivalent of trying to knock an airplane out of the sky and murder everybody aboard.
That plane was set to fly from Miami to the Bahamas in July. Fortunately, the tampering triggered an error message alerting pilots, so they aborted the takeoff.
A fired-up Serena Williams powered her way into the US Open final.
Again, Serena Williams.
Who can beat her when she plays like that?
She'll now face a 19-year-old, Bianca Andreescu, the Canadian who's been open about her admiration for the 23-time Grand Slam winner. The two squared off just last month in the Canadian Open final, where Williams was forced to retire with a back injury. Andreescu's kind gesture to the 37-year-old went viral. Williams returns to the US Open final after her much-talked-about loss in the final last year after a controversial penalty from the chair umpire.
All right, we have made it to the end of the week, and we are still tracking Hurricane Dorian, a powerful, slow-moving force, and now making its way through the Outer Banks in North Carolina, where it will make landfall. The state under flash flood warnings and tornado watch. So take a look at this video from a small island, a thin strip of land off the coast of North Carolina, slammed with flooding, and authorities may fear that many people are trapped. So I want to bring in Stephanie Ramos, who's right there in the Outer Banks in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Stephanie, it's obviously pretty bad where you are.
Hey there, Kimberly. It definitely is. We are definitely feeling the impact of Hurricane Dorian. It's hurricane force wind, lots of rain, and there is a big possibility of some major flooding across the Outer Banks. Right now, the beach here is getting pounded. Right now, we're being pelted by sand and rain, and it's only getting worse. So take a look for yourself. You can kind of make out the ocean waves crashing up against the shoreline. You can see here over to my left, the grass on these dunes being pushed sideways, the shingles off that house just flying off. It is intense right now. The wind speeds have increased dramatically over the last several hours, and it is pretty much a ghost town. A lot of people have heeded those warnings and have gotten out of town, but the eye of Dorian has made landfall in Hatteras, North Carolina. It is just south from where we are, but it is expected to push away from the Outer Banks. But right now, hundreds of thousands of people customers have already lost power. The big threat here across the Outer Banks, of course, are the tornadoes. A couple of them have already touched down yesterday in North Carolina. Thankfully, no serious injuries, but that's a big threat. Coastal flooding is also a big threat, which of course can be so destructive and so dangerous. Kimberly.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie, for the updates. Please stay safe. She's right there in Kitty Hawk in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And you heard her say tornadoes also mixed with the hurricane. So I want to bring in Mel Griffin, our ABC meteorologist, for the latest storm track. Mel, you've been keeping us updated on everything that's happening. What's going on now?
Yeah, it feels like we've been following Dorian for what it feels like weeks now, Kimberly. But finally, this morning at 8:35 a.m., as a Category 1 hurricane, 90-mile-per-hour sustained winds, Hurricane Dorian made landfall on Cape Hatteras. And, you know, right now, my biggest concern, like you saw where Stephanie is those winds. 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts have been reported across parts of the Outer Banks, but now it's also the flooding. We are seeing catastrophic flooding coming out of parts of the Outer Banks, and flash flood emergencies are in effect. So that's my biggest concern right now. Let's get right to the satellite. I'll give you the latest update on where Hurricane Dorian is. You can see on the satellite where it made landfall right there on Cape Hatteras, but now that eye is pulling away. It remains a Category 1, but it is starting to move faster towards the northeast. So this is good news. We want Dorian to move out and get out of there, but not before it continues to lash parts of eastern North Carolina with those 69 to even up to 90 mile-per-hour wind gusts. Very heavy rain, and that's why I'm saying the flash flooding, the storm surge. When you combine the two, we have extreme flooding going on in parts of eastern North Carolina along the Outer Banks. Flash flood emergencies are in effect there. Some river gauges are showing rapid increase up to 6 feet. So that could flood first-story homes. So that's my biggest concern right now when these wind gusts continue into the early afternoon. I want to time it out for you because Dorian's not over yet. Virginia Beach and Norfolk could get hit with some of this coastal flooding and gusty winds. Winds could reach tropical storm force strength there. But then Dorian does start to pull out by later this afternoon, and we are going to see some effects even in parts of southeastern New England. Take a look at Nantucket by tomorrow morning, 66 mile-per-hour wind gusts there. So some heavy rain and tropical storm conditions even in the forecast for parts of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Now here's the track. I just want to give you a quick look at how fast it's going to finally pull away from the U.S. It's going to pull out of North Carolina by this evening. It's all the way already into the Atlantic, skim southeastern New England and Nova Scotia by tomorrow night. So it is really going to move out of here pretty quickly. So now that Dorian is going to finally be exiting, people are asking, you know, what else is going on out there? And we are just days away from September 10th. It's the peak of hurricane season, and there is a lot of activity happening right now. My biggest concern is this wave off the coast of Africa. It does have a high chance of developing into something, possibly a depression, early next week. So we'll continue to track as we are getting right into the heart of hurricane season, Kimberly.
All right, Dorian's leaving, but more coming. Mel, thank you so much for the updates. We appreciate that. And she showed you there that those Outer Banks are very vulnerable. But now we're going to go to Jonah Kaplan from our ABC affiliate, who's right there in New Bern, North Carolina, with the latest. Jonah, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon or good morning. We hate to see, you know, what's happening in other parts of North Carolina, but here in New Bern, which is a coastal inland city on the Pamlico Sound, kind of like people living in Connecticut on the Long Island Sound, you know, people here are breathing a sigh of relief. And that's because, you know, this is about as high as the storm surge was able to get. And you could see, I mean, just barely over the perimeter here in Union Point Park. We're looking out, you could see some of the bright sunshine, there's visibility, and I call this bright sunshine because, well, it's about as bright as it's been over the past 48 hours. Here in New Bern, this was a place that was decimated by Hurricane Florence just a year ago. We had we had nearly 1,800 homes that were damaged or destroyed, more than $100 million worth of damage. So there were a lot of people here that were still not back in their homes. There were a lot of people here that had still been recovering, still been restoring their homes, still been rebuilding their lives, that were very worried about a second strike within 12 months. And that would have been absolutely devastating. There is some water here in the park. There is still some high water in areas. Some people without power, not many though, in the dozens here in New Bern, in the hundreds within the county, about 150 people staying in shelters last night in New Bern. So again, people relieved at least here, but obviously very concerned about what's happening in other parts of the Tar Heel state.
Right, Jonah, a very unpredictable storm. Thank you so much. Jonah Kaplan from WTVD in New Bern, North Carolina. So as we have been reporting all week, although the storm is moving on, it left the Bahamas battered and devastated beyond imagination. The death toll up to 30 people at least, and it's expected to rise as recovery efforts continue. So I want to bring in Victor Oquendo with the latest there. Victor?
Kimberly, help is on the way to the Bahamas, and they definitely need it. But even though they're so close to us here in South Florida, just a little more than 100 miles away, getting in can be a bit of a challenge. Right before we landed in Freeport, our pilot told us there is no working tower. The Navy has to coordinate who flies in and who flies out from a nearby ship. Overnight, the death toll rising 5 days after Hurricane Dorian left its mark on the Bahamas. Officials say at least 30 people have now been pronounced dead, with the fear the final death toll will be staggering. We flew with Trinity Air Ambulance to Grand Bahama with supplies collected by our Miami affiliate WPLG. From above, everywhere you look, debris litters the island, the devastation triggering widespread rescue efforts. Since Hurricane Dorian made landfall, the Coast Guard has rescued more than 200 people, even providing food to those left stranded. Other residents left to sift through what remains of their lives. We met Gino Daniels, whose home was destroyed. What was inside is now scattered all across the yard. But amid the disaster, he tells us he plans on rebuilding. Residents in the Bahamas say at this point, the emotional toll is worse than the physical. One woman said this hasn't been hell on earth, but hell on water. Kimberly?
All right, Victor. Yeah, the scenes there are completely surreal. So thank you for the updates. And guys, we move on to another tragic story. Firefighters in California continuing to battle some dangerous, fast-moving wildfires that broke out this week. The Tanaja fire, as it's called, was first reported as 25 acres, and now it's nearly 2,000 acres that have been scorched. So Clayton Sandell is right there in Murrieta, California with the latest. Clayton?
Hey, Kimberly, they're calling this the Tanaja fire. We're down in Murrieta, California, and you can see here just how close these homes were to the fire danger. This is where the tankers, air tankers, came swooping in over this neighborhood, and you can see all around here they dropped this reddish pink fire retardant, just coated the ground here, coated some of the houses, painted them pink, and they get it all over the trees and bushes here. Kind of leaves this residue here that retards the flames and hopefully keeps everything from burning. And if you take a look at here, this is really this gives you an idea of how close it came to these homes, because this is where, at the top of this ridge above me here, this is where the flames were, and it's kind of hard to see, but if you zoom in a little bit, we can see where there are some burned trees, some burned vegetation up there, and then a line of fire retardant that was dropped right there, effectively stopping those flames. And of course, a lot of it came down on these houses, on these cars, on the fire trucks over here, and just sort of coated everything in pink. This fire's up to about 2,000 acres. It has laid down overnight, but one of the problems that firefighters say is something called the Elsinore effect, which gets its name from the nearby town of Elsinore. What happens is in the mornings you get winds blowing offshore, so basically north to south. Then in the afternoon, that reverses and they start coming the other direction. So those shifting winds are what kick up those embers, kick up those flames, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. Thankfully, no homes have been destroyed here. A couple damaged. We saw some pretty dramatic video of residents who decided not to leave when they were ordered to evacuate, stood their ground, and as these flames came into the backyard, were basically protecting their homes till they got some professional help from CAL FIRE and some of the other firefighters here. In fact, here is a hotshot crew coming in right now. These are the men and women who get out there with the shovels. This is how fires are fought and won. They have been out probably all night with their shovels, cutting big paths into the dirt, cutting away those fuels so that the fire doesn't cross it. So they've probably been out all night, and I would presume are exhausted, but they are going to keep at it. There's about 800 firefighters that are out here at the moment. Like I said, no injuries, no damage, but one health effect going on right now is the smoke in the air, and officials are warning people not to breathe it. That is one of the reasons why they have decided to close schools today. Right now, as I said, in the morning time here, the fire has kind of laid down, but the worry is that those winds may return by afternoon and this thing could flare up again. Kimberly?
Thank you, Clayton. Absolutely terrifying. And remember this week we told you about another fire, a deadly boat fire, a recreational scuba diving ship that burst into flames and killed 34 people on board. Well, now the owner of that diving boat spoke out. So Will Carr is on the ground in Santa Barbara, California with the details. Will?
Good morning, Kimberly. The FBI is set to go back out to that site. You can see their dive team boats here as they try to pull out more parts of the Conception that is still 65 feet underwater. It comes as we're hearing a horrifying account from crew members of that boat of exactly what played out in the minutes after that fire broke out. They say they tried to push into the galley, but fierce flames pushed them back. They wanted to warn those 34 passengers who were sleeping down below in the sleeping quarters, but they say it was just too hot. The fire was just too big and they had to jump off that boat for their own safety. We're now hearing from the owner of that boat, and he says at this point there's nothing more the crew could have done. Take a listen.
And Jerry remained on the boat as long as he possibly could, trying to get those radio calls in. They said that they could see Jerry jump from the upper deck, a long jump, and that there was a trail of smoke following him. They thought he was on fire.
At the same time, federal investigators just inspected that boat behind me because it is a very similar type of boat and it's owned by the same company to the Conception. They were on the Vision. They went down to the bunk room where everybody would sleep because that's exactly the same layout that the Conception had. They wanted to see the escape routes. There's only two. You could actually go up or down the stairs, or there's an emergency hatch in the back of that room. In newly released video, you can see federal inspectors struggling to actually make it through that escape hatch. I asked one of the board members of the NTSB if she would feel comfortable sleeping in that room knowing the emergencies that could go on, and she said that she would not be comfortable doing that. I also asked if it would be easy for 34 people to try to get through that emergency hatch if there was a fire at the top of the stairwell, and she said she did not think that would be very easy for them. It comes as the owner of the Vision and the Conception is offering his condolences to all the families, but at the same time, he just filed a lawsuit under a pre-Civil War maritime law to try to prevent his liability from all this. It is a lawsuit with the timing that is now being called into question by many members of this community. Kimberly.
All right, Will, thank you so much for the updates on that story. And guys, we're moving on to something a little bit lighter. Everyone dreams of retiring at an early age, right? Well, if you haven't heard, 36-year-old rapper and singer Nicki Minaj is retiring. She announced it in a tweet on Twitter yesterday saying that she's decided to retire and wants to have a family. So who do we have to discuss this? Of course, we have Mr. Mike Muse.
What's happening?
Mike, is
so good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah.
Is this really it for Nicki? Is this how we're doing it now?
Listen, I was shocked when she sent that tweet out and let us know that she was retiring. I believe that now we're in a day and age where women can have it all. Like, they can be a rapper and be successful and still be a mother and still have a family. Nicki is at her prime. I think there's so much more talent that is still in her. I don't even think we've even reached Nicki Minaj's peak yet.
Really?
Right?
Yes.
And she's a phenomenal writer. She's a phenomenal actor. And I'm also too surprised that she hasn't explored more acting. So I'm wondering if she is retiring, i.e. putting rap to the side, and I'm hoping she focuses on her family, but then she'll focus on her acting too as well. Like, she she graduated from one of New York City's best performing art schools, so that is actually in her for drama.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that's exactly why she is so theatrical in her raps and in her rhymes. That's why she has all these caricatures that she portrays while she's rapping. And so I don't think it's her time. I think she should still keep going. I support the family. I support her having a kid. I'm like, Nicki, you can have the kid and give us more raps, right?
Right.
And I think also too, how wonderful would her rap be now that she has a child, right? So I believe
she'll be inspired.
She'll be inspired.
Yes.
I believe when someone becomes a mother or father, like, it just takes on a different purpose for them, right? Even if you look at like Beyonce and how much she integrates her children into videos now, right?
Totally.
And you look at Jay-Z and how he talks about his children. And so I think it just gives an actor or a rapper entertainer another layer of depth, right? And news that we haven't done done, man. But she's phenomenal. She's literally hands down not just the best female rapper, but I think one of the best MCs overall, man and woman.
People would probably debate you on that.
Yeah, I know.
You would probably get into a debate about that.
Listen, I'm not going to write that list. People are getting attacked for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, you know, like people say they're retiring, like you mentioned Jay-Z. Jay-Z retired like 15 times.
He did.
And here we are.
And he kept coming back.
And he's still here.
Because they believe there's so much more to go, right? He had so much in him. And think about all those times that he retired. We wouldn't have got some of his greatest material that he has now. And that's the beauty of hip-hop. Hip-hop is a narrative. It's storytelling. It's communicating what only is happening in neighborhoods, but it's also what's happening in society. It's all about social construct. And so as Jay-Z has grown, Jay-Z has entered rooms and spaces where most other rappers or entertainers, period, have not been privileged to. And so why not then tell us these stories from your own point of view? And we've been able to grow with Jay, right? Absolutely. As Jay's had these experiences, we went on the journey with him. Totally. As Jay-Z began to explore art, we began to explore art, right? And as Jay-Z began to explore philanthropy and criminal justice reform, then we are also too on this journey with him. And so that's the beauty of rap. It's a constant storytelling narrative. And who better than Nicki to do that, man? Nicki, don't call it quits yet, homie.
Well, here's the thing. She apologized. She sent this tweet, but then she apologized to the fans because she said it was actually very abrupt and maybe insensitive. She said that herself. So it came out of nowhere. You see the tweet right here. She says, "I'm still right here, still madly in love with you guys." So she goes, "The tweet was abrupt and insensitive. I apologize, babe." You know,
wow, yeah.
How should you apologize in this day and age? Twitter feels very like millennial. It's like very of the times. But what's the proper way you think to just say I'm done?
Yeah, I think she should have just left it at that. But I think I don't know if Nicki is going through. You know, look, she's growing, and Nicki's had some complications in the rap game right now. Cardi B.
You would be a great PR person.
Right?
You would be the greatest spokesperson.
I'm trying to go easy right now on this one, right? Recognizing place, space, and time, right? Because Cardi is like right there on her neck, and I think that has something to do with it too as well. Like, because if you look at Nicki, she does Queen's Radio. Every interview she always gives, she's always coming from this place of anger, right? She's very frustrated, and she's frustrated because she doesn't believe she's getting the proper respect that is due to her, and rightfully so, because now all the attention has focused on Cardi B, right? And
so I want to move on to something else before you leave us.
Okay, and before I get added on social media. Thank you so much for looking out for me.
Yes. So also in entertainment news, yesterday, Crazy Rich Asian screenwriter Adele Lim, she quit because she was reportedly getting paid a whole lot less than her co-writer. So what can we make of this? He was making like hundreds of thousands of dollars more than she was, and she said she's just being treated like the soy sauce on the dish, as she said.
I was very disappointed when that news came out and I heard about that, in particular because of the success of Crazy Rich Asians, not just commercially making over $230 million, but also culturally what Crazy Rich Asian represented. This is really the first time that Asian Americans are able to get into the mainstream of American film, right? And then for the first time they're able to have such huge, large box office draws, right? And we really had our moment with an African American community with Black Panther, right? So for the first time we can see that an all-Black led cast can have not only domestic success, but global success as well. And that's exactly what Crazy Rich Asians did for the Asian American community. And so I was excited to see this new plethora of Asian actors coming onto the scene, directors and writers, and they became a champion for it. So then now to see on the back end that this incredible Asian American writer is only getting a tenth of what the other writer is getting was very disappointing and disheartening, because you can't say you don't have any money. You guys literally made over $230 million, and so it goes to the respect value of it. And I love how Adele really held her ground when it came to that. She said specifically they bring people of color on to add the soy sauce to it, right? And to make the film really culturally authentic, right? But she really split the baby by saying, but they don't want the true authenticity of it, right? And individuals don't really value what that is. The reason why Crazy Rich Asian did so well is because it was so authentic culture to Asian. It didn't feel like a parody. It didn't feel like caricatures, right? And that's the responsibility of individuals like Adele. And so for individuals not to recognize that and not to pay that what it's worth is very, very troubling.
All right, Mike Muse, SiriusXM,
Yes.
breaking it down. We appreciate
Sidebar,
it.
so I get to be amazed. Looking good.
Appreciate it. All right, so I know we have a lot of theater lovers out there, so listen up. A new stage play is coming to New York, and it's called As Much As I Can. It's taking the personal stories of hundreds of gay and bisexual black men from Jackson, Mississippi, and Baltimore to get people to understand how HIV impacts these communities. So take a look at a clip.
My journey living as an HIV positive person started in 2010.
Black young gay men who come from a not so good household
younger and
are going to go through a rough path.
I just knew I was different. I did test positive. It was something that I had to come to terms with.
Black community is definitely a hot topic.
In any relationship, you have to have an immense amount of trust in your partner, and it's being alone in the bedroom with another man and being a man. Like there's a high level of trust.
And in certain places, if you are a certain type, you kind of just feel you don't belong there. A lot of folks feel like that when they first acquire HIV, like, why would someone do this to me? Some folks turn to sex, some folks turn to drugs, some folks turn to alcohol.
The fact that you don't have a healthy relationship with going to the doctors, you're not going to get tested. Health insurance plays a big key in it. That's poverty, that's economic.
I'm a fighter. I can beat this. From there, that spirit of I'm a fighter, I'm not going to let this define me.
We all know these people. You know, we are these people. What I feel about you has nothing to do with how we're going to solve it.
It's powerful, right? So it's an incredible cast, including you, because this is a completely immersive experience for the audience. So I'm joined by James Watson, who's one of the actors, and Sarah Hall, who's the playwright of this incredible play. So can you just start and tell us what it's actually about?
Yes. I think there's a couple layers to it. I think at its core, obviously, it's about the experience right now of Black gay men with HIV. And in the present tense, because I think sometimes we tell these stories in the past tense and we don't understand how emergent and immediate it is right now. And I think that's something that we're not talking about enough, so it's really about bringing visibility there, but also bringing depth. You know, there are sad moments in this story, but there's also moments of tremendous joy in the story. And then I think the thing that's really exciting, which makes it applicable for everybody, is that there's these meta themes that are like, how do we learn to care for ourselves and love ourselves? How do we have relationships that are supportive? How do we build the right types of communities around us? And then we all get to participate.
So, James, I want to ask you now, the cool thing about it is it is immersive for the audience. What exactly happens and how does that impact how you're doing what you need to do on stage?
Well, for me, it helps me to break down the fourth wall and to actually bring the audience into what's happening, because I mean, after all, it is immersive. So it's not immersive if the audience isn't a part of the show. They're just not sitting there watching it; they're a part of it.
And how are they a part of it? Like normally, you're in a chair, the stage is here. So logistically speaking, like where is the audience during this play?
The audience is in our playing field, wherever we're our entrances, our exits. The audience is there. Where we're performing in the area, the audience is there. So we could reach out and touch an audience member to get them pulled into what we're doing and what we're discussing.
Wow. That's incredible. That's really cool, completely different. So why do you think that, both of you, why do you think it's important to tell these stories like right now, 2019? Why does this matter like right now?
I think one of the things that's really exciting is that it's a place where we can actually create change. So obviously sometimes we think about disease as though it's specific and individual, but there's so much about this that is actually social and that we can make a difference as an audience. Like we need our audiences. They're our partners in the show. And this is very much an active show and a call to action. And you know, so it's really important that they come and they participate. You know, it's this limited run of just 5 nights, and it's just so important for them to be a partner with us.
And James, before we go, tell people where we can see this, what the dates are, so people know.
Oh, well, we can see this at Joe's Pub. The dates are the 12th to the 16th. It's 5 nights, Two shows a night.
2 shows a night.
5 nights.
Joe's Pub. You gotta get there. I'm gonna get there.
Yes.
I'm gonna get
We
there.
need you there.
So James Watson, Sarah Hall. The play is As Much as I Can. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And you guys, we made it to Friday. Oh my goodness. So continue to take care of yourselves this weekend. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. Then you can check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines and the hurricane coverage, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. So thanks for joining us. Thank you guys for being here. And we'll see you next week.
ABC News, straightforward.